Okay, I think we can get started. I'm going to start by sharing my screen so everybody can see the presentation. All right. Well, welcome everybody. It's so great to have you here tonight. This webinar is titled Dyslexia, School Accommodations, and How to Help at Home. And thank you so much for taking the time to be here tonight. We understand everybody is really busy, of course, and we appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us here tonight. We're really excited to be able to talk about dyslexia and share some info about that and also hopefully answer a bunch of your questions too. I thought I would start by introducing myself. My name is Peter Groth. I'm the founder and CEO of Dyslexia Connect Online Tutoring, which I started in 2010. I was trained in a method called the Orton-Gillingham method in 2004, which is a very well-known method for teaching kids, teenagers, and adults with dyslexia how to read and spell, and also for working with students who just generally have reading difficulties, even if they don't have dyslexia. And I worked as a dyslexia tutor for a number of years in person before starting Dyslexia Connect in 2010. Overall, I have about 21 years of experience working with students who have dyslexia. A little bit about Dyslexia Connect online tutoring. We provide online dyslexia tutoring to families and to school districts. And if you're interested, we would love to have you check us out on our website, which is dyslexiaconnect.com. And we do provide a free trial session to anyone who's interested in trying our tutoring out. And it's nice because it comes with no obligation at all. You can just try tutoring and see if it's a good fit for you. And also, the trial session comes with a free report that we provide after the session is done. And that can be very helpful to parents because it gives a lot of details about areas that their child is struggling in and also a path forward to help them improve in those areas and improve in their reading and spelling. So you can sign up for one of those trials if you want to at our website. So I thought I would go over the objectives for today. First of all, I'm going to talk about why dyslexia accommodations are needed, top classroom accommodations, top homework accommodations, top dyslexia accommodations for tests and exams, top ways to help a student with dyslexia at home, and then we're going to have our question and answer session. The presentation will probably last between 20 and 30 minutes, and then hopefully we'll have about 20 or 30 minutes to answer questions as well. I'm very happy to be joined by Katie and Natalie tonight from the Dyslexia Connect administrative staff. They're going to be helping to answer your questions today. They are both former teachers and dyslexia tutors, and they have a wealth of education and experience in teaching and working with students who have dyslexia, and I'm really glad to have them here tonight. If you have questions, you can submit those at any time tonight during my presentation or during the question and answer session. And we would like to ask that if you would like to submit a question, please select the Everyone tab in Zoom chat and then type in your question there. And by selecting the Everyone tab, that is actually going to make it easier for us to keep track of the questions that are being asked because it'll put all the questions in one thread in the Zoom chat. In addition, it also allows everybody else to see your question. And something that we notice while we're doing these webinars is that often a lot of our attendees will have similar questions. And so if you use the Everyone tab to submit your question, everyone else in the webinar will also see that and see the answer that we give as well. And they might be able to be helped out by that, which is really nice. Also, if you wouldn't mind, we would love if you could include your role with your question. For example, if you are a teacher who works with students who have dyslexia, if you can mention you're a teacher in your chat question, or if you're a parent of a child with dyslexia, if you can mention that. Having that additional information helps us to really focus the question and hopefully provide you with an answer that is the most relevant to you and provides the most specific information. So if you can include that with your question, that's always helpful. There is going to be a recording of the webinar available, and this is going to be sent out to everyone who registered for the webinar. That's going to be sent out next week in an email. So You'll get an email with a recording in it, and you can watch the webinar as many times as you want, or maybe certain sections if you would like to rewatch certain sections. Um, One of the great things about these webinars is that our attendees are also able to provide great info. One of the reasons I like doing these webinars is that we get a bunch of people together with a great amount of experience and training and knowledge about dyslexia, and we can answer each other's questions, which is really nice. So if you use that Everyone tab when you're submitting your question, often our attendees are also able to provide great answers to questions, which is really, really helpful. As mentioned in the advertisements for this webinar, we are able to provide a professional development certificate if you would like to use this for professional development hours, if you're a teacher at a school or a paraprofessional at a school. And this certificate is available to anyone who attends the full live webinar tonight. And if you would like a form, please contact us from our website, which is dyslexiaconnect.com, for a certificate. Once you're at the website, you can click on any of the buttons that say free trial to send us a message because those will pull up our contact forms. Or you can also click on the contact page in the menu, and that will bring up another contact form that can use to request a certificate. Unfortunately, we are not able to provide a certificate in response to requests in the chat during the webinar. So if you would like a certificate, please contact us from the website, and we would happy to talk about that with you. Okay, well, dyslexia and school accommodations. Why are they needed? Well, accommodations help us see a student's potential and properly evaluate their learning, which of course is really, really important. Without accommodations for students with dyslexia, we may just be testing their reading and spelling ability over and over again. And if you can imagine a situation maybe where a student with dyslexia is required to read something in social studies or read a biography about somebody, and they don't seem to know the information, it's very possible that they don't know the information even though they worked hard on the assignment simply because they're struggling with reading. Or if you think about a situation in which they're asked to write a paragraph or an essay, um, it's possible that they may write the essay, but it may have a lot of spelling mistakes in it simply because of their dyslexia. And we want to make sure that we're not testing students with dyslexia just on their reading and spelling over and over again in every subject. So here are my top 3 classroom accommodations for dyslexia recommendations. And I wanted to mention that these are great for teachers and parents. These accommodations are very helpful for teachers who implement them. And knowing about these accommodations is helpful for parents because it helps them determine which accommodations to request at IEP meetings. And I'm going to talk about each accommodation, share why it is helpful, and share how it helps. And I wanted to mention that these are great accommodations for students with dyslexia of any age and grade. So number 1, allow a student with dyslexia to not read out loud. Why? Well, reading out loud in class may cause kids with dyslexia lots of anxiety. They may be embarrassed about their difficulty with reading or worried that they're going to be found out by their classmates. And the anxiety related to reading out loud in class can sometimes be so bad that it gives students with dyslexia an upset stomach. And for that reason, they may be so nervous that they may try to avoid school. And I've heard about this on multiple occasions, actually, from the parents of students I've worked with and students in our program, that sometimes that idea of reading out loud in class can cause so much stress and so much anxiety that the student may be having problems with stomach being upset before school or really resisting going to school. How does this help? Well, it helps kids with dyslexia be much happier in class, and as a result, they will avoid school less, which is a great thing. Number 2, provide step-by-step directions. This helps because dyslexia affects how kids process information, and they may have difficulty processing, prioritizing, and remembering long lists of directions. By giving one direction at a time, students with dyslexia don't have to process multiple steps at once, and that's really helpful. And also, students with dyslexia with this accommodation will have an easier time following instructions and completing tasks and assignments. And that's great because that means they're going to get more of their work done and submit more things on time. And so we'll have more ways to see how they're actually doing and to be able to assess their work and their knowledge. Number three, extend time for reading and writing assignments. Why? Well, students with dyslexia may need more time to read material and to formulate written responses. If a student with dyslexia needs more than additional time, another option might be to pair them up with another student so that they can work as a team. That way, if there's a reading assignment, you could pair the student who has dyslexia with a student who reads well, and they can work on the project together, and that will make it much easier for the student with dyslexia to do. Another option is you can also have someone read the assignment out loud to the student so that they're understanding that and able to understand it perfectly. A lot of students who have dyslexia who are still struggling with reading actually have very good listening comprehension. And so by reading the directions to them out loud or reading the assignment or the project, quite often they'll have a really good understanding of it, sometimes much better than they will if they're trying to read it themselves. I just wanted to mention on a related note, audiobooks are really great for students with dyslexia, and this is a great tool to use with any reading assignments. They allow kids with dyslexia to keep up with reading assignments, and so much is available on audio today that wasn't in the past. There are lots of novels, of course, and so if there's a novel being read in class, the student with dyslexia maybe can listen to the audiobook so that they can talk about the same novel that everybody else is reading and keep up with that. Also, there are sometimes audio versions available for textbooks and nonfiction books that might be used in class. And so that can be a really useful tool. And by giving kids with dyslexia more time for assignments, reading and writing assignments in class, those assignments are going to cause less stress for them, and it's also going to help them complete those assignments. Okay, well, let's talk about top three dyslexia accommodations for homework. Number one is clear step-by-step directions and completed examples. And students with dyslexia sometimes get overwhelmed with multi-step assignments and may have difficulty getting started. And so giving clear step-by-step directions will help kids with dyslexia feel less overwhelmed. It'll help them get started more promptly and will save them time on completing the assignment. And those different things that are given will also help them to do the assignment correctly, which is great. So you'll have less situations in which they maybe turn in something that they've worked very hard on that might be off the topic. Also, completed examples can really help them understand the assignment by giving them a big picture. Often kids with dyslexia will be really intimidated when trying to start a project, and it will just seem sort of overwhelming to them, and they might not know where to start. By looking at a completed example, that gives them an idea of what it's supposed to look like in the end, and having that bigger picture of the assignment can often be really reassuring for them. Number two, shortened assignments and less homework. Why? Well, students with dyslexia usually require much longer to do an assignment than students who do not have dyslexia. And this accommodation will help them complete homework without having to spend exponentially more time on it than students without dyslexia. How does this help? Well, it leads to less homework battles at home. Something that a lot of parents that we work with talk about is just the struggle of trying to get their student to start assignments and complete assignments and get those turned in on time. And if they have less work to do and a more manageable workload, they're often happier, feel less discouraged, and they may actually turn in higher quality work because they don't feel so overwhelmed and pressured. And another thing is that this will hopefully help them to have time for hobbies and other interests that really bring them joy and help their self-esteem. And one of the things we've noticed is that for students with dyslexia, any sort of interest or hobby or thing they're good at, um, all of that stuff helps to build their self-esteem, and that transfers actually to every area of their life. So if they have something they're really good at, that confidence is going to help them at school and outside of school and really in every area. Number three, provide printed notes or allow pictures of the whiteboard. And the reason for this is that notes are very difficult for students with dyslexia to take. Many students with dyslexia write slowly and struggle with penmanship, and they may, if they're able to take notes, which they often struggle with because of the speed to keep up, they may have difficulty reading their notes back when they need to use them. So even if they're able to take notes down by hand, they might have a hard time using them once it's time to do the project or do the test that they were supposed to be using those notes for. And providing them with printed notes will ensure that they have the same amount of information for the assignment that other students have, which is really great. Also, printed notes make it easier for parents or anyone else working with the student to assist them, which is really, really helpful. And this leads to less stress at home. So if somebody's helping them at home or a tutor is working with them, helping them with the homework assignment, having those directions will make it really clear what the project is supposed to be in case the student maybe doesn't have a good understanding of it from what they heard in class or isn't sure what the project is supposed to look like. And of course, all these things will lead to more complete and detailed work from students with dyslexia. Well, let's talk about three dyslexia accommodations for tests and exams. So, number one, have the exam read aloud to the student. Many students with dyslexia read slowly and struggle with reading accuracy. And this accommodation allows us to determine a student's knowledge of content rather than testing their reading ability over and over again. And I gave that example before about how that can work. For example, if we read a comprehension test aloud to a student with dyslexia, we can determine if they have learned the information, even if they still have difficulty reading it. And it's interesting to see that because sometimes you can have a student read a passage and they might have trouble. You might think, well, they're not really getting this, but then you read it to them and ask them questions about it, and they may have a very good understanding of it. It's just simply their reading struggles that are leading to difficulty with them answering questions. How it helps? Well, we get to discover what students with dyslexia really know and more accurately evaluate their learning, which is really, really helpful. And it will also help students with dyslexia feel less anxious about tests and exams. This is really important because students with dyslexia often do feel really, really nervous before tests and exams. So different accommodations that we can use to help them feel more relaxed will help us get more accurate results when we're having them do tests, and also just make them much happier and calmer when they're doing those. Number two, give the student additional time. This is important because students with dyslexia may need extra time to read the exam if they are reading it to themselves, and also extra time to process the questions and to formulate their answers. They may need to read the material twice to really understand it. And so having extra time is going to allow that. By giving them extra time, students with dyslexia will be less anxious about exams, and the assessment will also be a more accurate gauge of what they know. Number three, grade on content, not spelling or handwriting. Students with dyslexia often struggle with spelling and penmanship. And if we grade them on those factors in every subject, we may not be giving them credit for what they actually know because we might just keep grading them on spelling or on grammar and not giving them credit for the content of what they actually know and what they're presenting to us. And this accommodation allows us to see what a student actually knows about a subject and to grade them accordingly. Well, here are a summary of school accommodations that we just spoke about. For the classroom, allow a student with dyslexia to not read out loud, provide step-by-step directions, extend time for reading and writing assignments. For homework, clear step-by-step directions and examples, shortened assignments and less homework. 3, provide printed notes. For tests and exams, have the exam read aloud to the student, provide them with additional time, and grade on content rather than spelling or grammar. Okay, well, we're going to talk a little bit now of top ways to help a student with dyslexia at home. And this is really helpful for parents and also for teachers to suggest to parents if they are asking about ways to help their child at home. Number one, discuss your child's dyslexia with them. Why? Well, if a child does not understand their dyslexia or know that they have dyslexia, they may attribute their struggles with reading and spelling to them not being smart enough or not working hard enough. This is not true, so we need to make sure that they really know that and understand that. And there's a lot of good information online about how to discuss dyslexia with your child. And Katie's actually going to share a link to one article that's about that so that you can check that out if you would like to. Number two, tell them about successful people with dyslexia. There are lots and lots of successful people in every field and every profession who have dyslexia. And this can be something really helpful. Giving them stories about people like this can often help them feel better about having dyslexia and also encourage them because they'll realize that they can really reach for their dreams and to achieve their goals, and that dyslexia doesn't have to hold them back from that. So, here are just some pictures of some really well-known people who have dyslexia: Jennifer Aniston, the actress, Channing Tatum, the actor, Damon John, who's a member of the Shark Tank cast and the founder of FUBU Clothing, Richard Branson, famous entrepreneur, Octavia Spencer, Oscar-winning actress, Orlando Bloom, an actor, and Keira Knightley as well. So lots of different people, and you can find lots of lists of successful people with dyslexia online. Number three, have your child read out loud to you. And here's some techniques to use when doing that. When you're having them read out loud to you, have your student go back when they misread a word, add an extra word or miss a word, then have them read the same sentence again. Because one of the things that we're going for when we have students read out loud is to hopefully have them read the sentence with 100% accuracy. And of course, that might mean going back to have them read it again. But what we're trying to do is get students out of the habit of guessing at words, because this is a common coping mechanism that a lot of students with dyslexia end up using if they haven't received the right type of reading instruction yet. And they can take a while to break that bad habit. So we always want to help them get in the habit of sounding words out, reading them, and making sure that they're reading what's on the page. If they misread a word while you're reading with them, ask them to sound the word out. So for example, if the word's cat, you can have them sound it out phonetically, at. Why? Well, monitoring reading time is a great way to help students with dyslexia make progress. It helps them pay attention to accuracy, and as I mentioned, get out of bad reading habits like guessing at words. If your student is in dyslexia tutoring, your tutor can probably recommend specific things to ask your student to pay attention to while they are reading aloud. And I wanted to mention that for reading aloud to work and be effective, you don't necessarily even need to do it for extended periods of time every day. Anything helps. So even if you can fit in maybe 10 minutes here and there or 15 minutes here and there, those things are all going to be positive, and that's going to be a positive thing for your child. Number four, use decodable books. What are decodable books? Well, they are they are books that use phonetic sounds and words that are at a certain level. And students only encounter sounds and syllable types that they have already learned about. So, to give you an example of how this contrasts to other books, often regular books do not use controlled text and they are not decodable. So we don't really know what level of words are going to be in there. Maybe 80% of the words are going to be at the student's level, but then 20% will be way out of their level and just syllable types and sounds they haven't encountered before, which can be discouraging for them. And so decodable books are great for helping them learn to decode and to pay attention to what's written. There's also a group of decodable books that are called high-low books, and this stands for high interest and low level. These can really help older students stay interested in reading because they provide topics of interest that older students would be interested in, but at a reading level that is appropriate for them. And if you're looking for decodable books, teachers and tutors can usually give some recommendations for those. You can also look those up online as well, decodable texts. Here's some recommendations for helping your student with homework at home. So, number 5, ask for detailed directions and notes for assignments. And of course, we mentioned that for teachers as that being a useful thing for teachers to give out as well. Ask your child's teacher for detailed directions, notes, and completed examples for homework assignments. These will make the assignment much more clear for your student and also make it much easier for you to help them. Number 6, invest in your students' interests. So, why? Well, investing in students' interests can help them build self-esteem and stay interested in learning new things. And it can also provide them with a feeling of accomplishment as they work to improve their reading and spelling. And as I mentioned before, one of the great things is that a confidence boost in one area for a student with dyslexia positively affects all areas. So if they have an interest they like an artistic endeavor, or they play an instrument that they're really good at and have real talent at, those things are going to help to boost their self-esteem and give them more confidence in every area of their lives, in school and outside of school. So that's a really positive thing. And a confidence boost in one area affects all areas. If you aren't sure what your child's interests are, try paying attention to what they spend their time on and what they gravitate towards, because that will usually give you some good clues about what they're interested in and maybe some things that you could help them explore more. Number 7, praise progress every little bit. This is really important because when we praise the progress of a student with dyslexia, we help them see that their hard work is making a difference, and this encourages them to keep going instead of giving up. It doesn't matter how slow or how small the progress is, we can always find progress to praise them for. And this is something that really helps to motivate them to keep going. This is something we do a lot with the students in our tutoring program because it's just really positive reinforcement and helps them feel like, yeah, I should be proud of what I'm doing and proud of the fact that I'm working so hard. And it helps them to see that forward momentum instead of constantly feeling like, oh, this is grade level, I'm behind, I should be here, but I'm here. So really praise them for any kind of progress they're making because it will really help. And of course, I mentioned before, audiobooks. I wanted to mention that again. These are great to use at home, and we have a lot of different resources for audiobooks these days. Of course, you can use different apps like Audible. A lot of libraries, public libraries, have apps that you can use to borrow audiobooks. That's really nice as well. Or sometimes they have audiobooks in the library that you can get on CD or with little audio players. And then there are also different things like Learning Ally, which is a service you can sign up for that has a lot of audio material, or Bookshare. So there are a lot of different options available. And audiobooks can help a student with dyslexia complete reading assignments and enjoy their reading assignments, which is great because they're having positive association about books. They can also help a student stay interested in reading while they are working to improve their reading skills. Well, I just wanted to mention if you're interested in more information about dyslexia, we have a bunch of information on the Dyslexia Connect website, and that is just at dyslexiaconnect.com. This is a picture of our homepage, and you can find all kinds of dyslexia info if you click on the button here that says Guide to Dyslexia. That will open up a page that has different articles on it and also a link to our blog about dyslexia, which has a lot of helpful info about dyslexia on there. I also wanted to mention the Dyslexia Connect YouTube channel. We have all kinds of different videos about dyslexia on our YouTube channel. Here's the address right here, and I think Katie is dropping that in the chat as well. We have videos about dyslexia accommodations, symptoms of dyslexia, how to test for dyslexia, and much, much more. And a lot of people find those videos really helpful. And so typically, if you're looking for information about any specific aspect of dyslexia, you likely will be able to find a video on there because we have a lot of different videos available. Okay, well, it's time for our raffle. We are going to be doing our raffle for a $50 Amazon gift card. And anyone who is attending the live webinar tonight is eligible. So Katie has entered the names of our attendees into a randomizer, and she's going to choose one name to receive the gift card. And to claim the prize, we would like to ask that if your name does come up as the winner, please respond in the chat box within 2 minutes to confirm that you are present. If we don't receive confirmation in 2 minutes, we're going to pick another name and then wait another 2 minutes to see confirmation that they are here. And we'll just keep doing that until we have our winner for that. All right. Well, thank you so much for attending tonight, everybody. We're so grateful that you could be here with us tonight. We're gonna go on to our question and answer session in just a moment, but I wanted to mention again that if you're interested in online dyslexia tutoring, feel free to check us out at dyslexiaconnect.com. You can sign up for a free trial there with no obligation if you'd like to. Also, we'd love to have you follow us on social media. We're very active on Facebook and Instagram. We post about dyslexia pretty much every day of the week, Monday through Friday, with different graphics and different information about dyslexia. And of course, our YouTube channel, I just mentioned that also. I wanted to mention that our social media channels are a great way to hear about additional webinars that we have coming up. We usually take a break in December, but we're planning on having another webinar in January, and we'll be sending out information about that and also posting on Instagram and Facebook about that. So we would love to have you join us for that webinar. Well, I think we can go ahead and get started with some questions here. So, uh, Katie or Natalie, do we have any questions that we would like to start with answering out loud? I'm going
I've
to take
got
a
a
look at chat.
few written
Okay.
down. One of them, one of our attendees asked about fluency assessments for high school. Do you have any recommendations? Because she would like to see how her students are reading compared to their peers.
That's a great question. Would you have any recommendations for that, Katie? I was thinking of the ones that we use a lot, and we use a lot of fluency tests that are probably up to like seventh or eighth grade with a lot of
Mhm.
students in our program. Um, do you know of any high school fluency
I
passages?
It's going to be hard to find high school fluency passages that have the numbers at the end of
Oh,
every
right.
row. So I would recommend using a website like ReadWorks that you can get a free account for. You can find fiction and nonfiction texts, and then use another website where you can copy and paste text and they will count the words for you to make it
Oh,
a
that's a
little
great
bit
idea.
easier in terms of calculating because they should be reading over 100 words in a minute at least. And so that's a lot of words to count in the middle of your school day.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. That's a great idea to have to avoid counting all those words manually, right? Every time you want to do a passage. So that's a great idea. Um, Natalie, do you have any recommendations regarding that as far as high school level resources you come across?
I'm going to say read work, and I believe commonlit.org also has upper level passages, and you can filter by Lexile and grade level.
Okay, excellent. Let's see. Okay. Oh, Nicole asked, do you always post in the Orton Gillingham page on Facebook? There are actually a couple of Orton Gillingham groups that we post in, and I think about maybe once a week we'll post something in there. So sometimes one of the graphics that we have, or we also post about our webinars in a couple of the Orton Gillingham groups that are on Facebook. So yeah, thanks for that question.
Someone asked if we ever do webinars on dyscalculia and dysgraphia.
Oh, that's a great question. We We have not done those in the past, but that's actually a really interesting topic. I'm going to write that down. Thank you for that recommendation because we haven't done any in the past, but I think that would be those would be interesting topics. Okay. Okay. Stephanie had the question, do you have tips to get private schools on board with accommodations? So with private schools, one thing you might encounter is there's not necessarily a formal system to have accommodations for the student like there would be with an IEP or 504 at a public school. And so your best bet might be to talk to the people who work with your child, who are able to make those decisions. And so that could be the classroom teacher, maybe a school counselor or an administrator who has decision-making power over that as well. And I would say that might be the best way in a private school. Would you have any recommendations, Katie, about that?
I replied just to that attendee
Oh
and
yeah,
recommended reaching out to the school administration or the teacher and maybe just asking for one or two accommodations to start to see if
yeah,
those make an impact. I mentioned that many times teachers feel bogged down and so they think accommodations is adding more to the plate. And
sure.
so if you just ask for one or two instead of a list of 15, you may have an easier time figuring out what works and working with that teacher to get those accommodations in place, would be my recommendation.
That's a really good suggestion. And of course, if they start doing one accommodation or two accommodations and they see that they're really working and making a difference, they're probably going to be much more invested and also they'll be less overwhelmed by them and they won't think that accommodations means a list of 35 things that they have to make sure that they follow every day.
Right.
That can be really good and often, of course, too, accommodations it's to really make a difference. Sometimes it's a matter of finding just two or three that the student really finds helpful that really make a difference for them because occasionally we'll see where a student maybe has multiple accommodations, but they're not making use of certain ones. And they may be able to find a couple that really make a difference. And so it might not require a lot to make a difference for them.
I think there are also ways, as I was thinking about this, there are ways to build in accommodations that any staff member in that given classroom could do. So maybe there's a
Yeah.
paraprofessional in the room or the reading specialist. For example, I had worked with a kindergarten student and he had a really hard time spelling CVC words, which are just three-letter words.
Hmm.
So on his spelling paper, we would print them in advance and put three boxes. So he knew one letter went in each of those boxes, and he had to have three letters to spell the word. And so it helps kind of process that information. And you can print those in advance. And so there's no prep work or extra work to be done.
Yeah, that's a great idea. It's an excellent suggestion. Yeah. Let's see. Do we have some other questions that we want to answer out loud, maybe?
Peter, there was another question about the difference between Orton Gillingham and other programs like Barton or Wilson, all the other ones.
Yeah, that's a great question, and there are a lot of them out there, actually. So we often have discussions about a lot of the methods that are related to Orton Gillingham because we're familiar with a lot of them, but occasionally we will still come across one where we think, "Oh, what is this? Where is this from? Who's teaching this? Where's the training program? What does it look like?" And we have to do a little bit of research to find it out. So I would say Orton Gillingham often is the base for all of these programs that are in the Orton Gillingham family, but the specific way they're implemented may vary a little bit between these programs. And so, for example, thinking about the Barton program, Barton is known for having a very specific scripted program where students and the teachers specifically that are teaching with this method know exactly what to say because that's provided to them. And they get instructions about, all right, you present this concept, here's what you tell the student about it, here's what you go on to next. And so it's a lot of times people who like to have a very structured program like the Barton method because they are able to follow along with that specifically, and there's a very clear start and end to each lesson and how they're supposed to go with that. Sometimes, and other programs like Orton Gillingham, for example, um, when a tutor or a teacher is trained in Orton Gillingham, there may be a little bit more of the teacher planning things out and interpreting things themselves as far as planning the lessons, and they may be a little bit more um, they may be trying to adapt those lessons a little bit more to what they're seeing during the session. So, for example, they may introduce a concept and say, "Yeah, the student, well, we've introduced this. They don't really seem to be getting it this way. I'm going to try teaching it a different way next time, coming back to it." And so you'll often find that the methods sort of emphasize different things like that. And Katie, would you say with Wilson, how does Wilson differentiate from Orton Gillingham, would you say?
I would say Wilson is different in the scope and sequence. A lot of them have different scope and sequences, which are just the
Yeah.
order of the skills that they are taught and the additional materials that go along with them.
Yep.
With Wilson, you're going to work through each book and you're going to read and spell each of those skills till mastery until you move on, which is different than some of the other programs.
Yeah.
IMSE, which I am also trained in, is a little less, I would say less firm in that it's typically used in school systems and the lessons repeat and cycle. And so it's just a different scope and sequence and set of skills than Wilson would be.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. And certain training programs for OG, it might be the type of thing where they provide the teacher with basically all the tools and all the skills they need. And at that point, the teacher takes those and says, "All right, I'm going to plan my lesson for work with this student," and they go from there. Whereas other methods might have a more specific regimented lesson plan they follow for each of those. And something I wanted to mention, one of the great things about all these methods, the Orton Gillingham method and the methods in the Orton Gillingham family, is that they emphasize teaching for mastery, which is really, really important for working with students who have dyslexia. So the idea is that literacy is very much a building block skill, and you need to make sure that the student masters each concept and sound that you're teaching before you go on to the next one, because otherwise you're just going to build in confusion and they're going to have a hard time making progress. So that's very important, and these methods often are very closely related. Of course, I think Wilson was started by one of the people who helped create Orton Gillingham or was very involved in that. And so you notice lots of similarities between these methods. And they one of the great things about them is they are very effective, and they share the same core philosophy about what it takes to teach a student with dyslexia to read and spell. Yeah, let's see. Do we have any other questions at all that we want to address out loud?
There was another question, Peter. It seems like a parent shared that she feels like she could be doing more for her daughter, but she doesn't know where to begin, either with just reading or spelling. And she wants to help give her daughter a chance. Is there anything else she could do for her? What would you recommend?
Sure. So, one thing I would definitely recommend is if you can be using Orton Gillingham techniques and strategies with her, I highly recommend that. That is something that you can sometimes find some books that sort of explain those things for parents, different techniques you can use. I'm thinking about what is that what is that one book, Katie? It's not reading. Is it ABC? It's that one that's kind of Orton Gillingham based that boy, I was just on the top of my tongue
I
right
think
now.
is it reading in 100 lessons? I've
Something,
seen that one discussed because
yeah,
it's
yeah. Oh,
based
recipe,
on,
recipe for reading.
oh, recipe for reading.
Recipe,
Yes.
I'm
Yeah.
thinking of. Yeah,
Yeah.
so some books like that that sort of lay out Orton Gillingham type techniques to use. Those are really, really helpful, and those can help a parent to make sure that they're really teaching their student in a way that they're going to be able to learn. So that's a very, very good thing to do, and it can help you start very much with the building blocks, like we were talking about CVC words before, just starting with three-letter words, consonant, vowel, consonant. You can also work on phonics flashcards at home. Those are available to purchase online, and you could search for something like Orton Gillingham flashcards. That'll get you to the right type of thing that you can use. So those are very helpful to try to use those techniques. Um, if you work with a dyslexia tutor who is trained in Orton Gillingham or one of the methods in the Gillingham family, that is highly effective for helping a student make progress as well. So those are a couple of options. Yeah, thanks for your question.
Another question, Peter, is it always recommended that a student who has dyslexia, do they have to have an IEP in the school system?
That's a great question. And what would you say about this, Katie, based on your experience? Would you say that it depends whether the student really needs it and is going to benefit from it?
Yeah, I would say it's going to depend on the level of need and how far your child is behind grade level. So there are certain school districts or schools where you will probably need an IEP to get basic accommodations and other supports in place, where other school districts may have more flexibility, where your child could see the reading specialist who is trained in Wharton Gillingham and could work
Yeah.
with them without having an IEP. It's going to be very specific to your school or your district.
Yep. Yeah, that's great information. Do you have anything to add to that, Natalie?
No, I think what Katie said was all correct.
Right, yeah, sounds good. Yeah, thank you, Katie. Um, let's see. See if there are any other questions we would like to answer out loud. Okay.
Somebody asked, any recommendations for spelling difficulties besides speech to text on computer and not counting against them on assignments? Any other devices or options?
Yeah, devices or options. So, um, one thing, of course, would be to try to work with that student to help them improve their spelling. And as mentioned before, using Orton Gillingham principles, those are very effective for that. And that's a good thing to do. As far as different devices to use while they're working to improve their spelling, I would say that. Speech to text can be good. Also, you might find with a student that certain spell check or grammar check works particularly well for them. So I know different word processing software, sometimes they have different systems of how they do spell check, and that can be something that can be helpful. Um, one thing one thing that's important often for students with dyslexia when they're trying to use those is to benefit from spell check, you often need to get the word close enough, of course, to how it's actually spelled. And for that, once again, we're sort of looking at helping the student learn more about spelling and improve their spelling, hopefully, to be able to get to that point. Because I definitely hear stories from students about this with dyslexia who are trying to spell a word. They're like, I don't know, I typed it in 3 times, and it turns out the spelling just wasn't quite close enough for the suggestion to come up, and it might have been confusing for that reason. So yeah, so those are some things that can help. If we're talking about reading accommodations, there's also a lot of options these days to have text from a computer or tablet read out loud, which is really nice, built into Windows and built into Google as well. So that can be helpful. Would you have any recommendations, Natalie, for to answer that question?
I was thinking the same thing you said, and I know there's also like little spell check devices, but like you said, you have to kind of get close to the word.
Yeah.
I know there's a an add-on to your browser called Read and Write, and it can offer spelling
Oh,
suggestions and word banks. That could be something that she could look into as well.
yeah, that's a great suggestion actually. There are often add-ons that you can use in browsers. Like I know in Chrome, there's the Chrome add-on site where you can find all kinds of different stuff on there. Like I use the Translate add-on to Chrome sometimes if I'm just looking at something and I want to see a translation from another language. That's really useful, and so you might be able to find something in there that really helps with spelling. Yeah. Would you have any recommendations, Katie? Things you've seen?
My recommendation wouldn't be technology. I would actually recommend sitting down with the student and having them talk through their piece of writing and creating a word bank right there in front of them.
Oh
So that
yeah.
they can see all of those advanced vocabulary words because typically students with dyslexia, they have all the ideas. They have a hard time translating them to paper. And they're going to choose easier words that they already know how to spell or think they can spell
Yeah.
rather than the vocabulary that they actually want to use. So
Yep.
I would recommend just sitting down and helping them draft a word bank that they could then pull the words from while they're writing.
That's a really great suggestion, and that's something that often happens where students will be writing something, but they'll end up using different words that they think they know how to spell versus the ones that they might actually want to spell because that word is particularly difficult. And so, yeah, giving them the vocabulary they need and the word bank that can really help them to be able to use the words that are going to be most appropriate for what they're writing instead of a situation where they maybe end up using 15 or 20 alternate words in an essay because they don't really know how to spell the ones they really want to use. Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Katie. Yeah, let's see. Any others we want to address?
What would be some accommodations that you could use for a student who has dyslexia and also ADHD?
Also ADHD. Yeah, that is a great question because there's often overlap that we can see between dyslexia and ADHD, which sometimes can make it a little bit complicated to determine whether it's dyslexia we're seeing or ADHD. So, for example, something that we see often with students who have dyslexia, they sometimes will be disruptive in class to try to avoid writing, or I'm sorry, to avoid reading out loud in class, or they may actually even physically avoid reading material. So you might put some book in front of them, they may turn away from it, not want to look at it. It may seem like they're distracted, but in fact, they're just really scared and they don't want to try to read it because they feel like when they try to read, they fail every time. And so some of those things can look like ADHD, even though they're dyslexia, and likewise as well. So I would say that accommodations for both of those, we'd probably recommend a lot of accommodations that we just recommend for dyslexia itself, because those are often really useful. The ones we mentioned in the presentation tonight, for example, the one about having clear written directions for assignments, that's going to help students with dyslexia and also students with ADHD, because it's going to help them to keep things organized and not be intimidated by the project. Um, Different things like not having to read out loud in class will help, because of course that will help them from being nervous about reading assignments. Would you have specific recommendations, Katie, that you can think of that would?
Breaking things down into smaller steps, into more
Mhm.
manageable pieces within their day. I would recommend using a timer. A lot of students see a timer as a negative tool, but it can really be used in the positive as well, where you could tell them, hey, I want you to work really hard for 2 minutes on your writing. Can you
Yeah,
give me 2 minutes and then we'll talk through it? And so, kind of giving them those baby steps to work independently and build confidence in their skills, and then checking back in with them. It makes it not a pressure of they're trying to finish something by the given time. So, maybe a time
yeah.
in shortening things.
That's a great suggestion. And I feel like timers have gotten so popular with
Mhm.
adults during work days now as well. I know a lot of people who use them when they're studying. They're like, study 20 minutes, take a 5 minute break, study 20 minutes, or work for 30 minutes, take a 5 minute break, and so on. So, yeah, timers can be really positive and can provide really positive structure and reinforcement. And also, kids with dyslexia and ADHD often really like to have structure and kind of know how things are going to happen. So if they have more things that really do provide that structure and stability in the day, they're going to react positively to that. And something that we sometimes do with our students who have both dyslexia and ADHD as a strategy during sessions, sometimes the tutor will actually present the student with a plan of what they're going to do that day when they start. So, like, we're going to spend 5 minutes doing this, working on flashcards, then we're going to spell, and then we're going to play a game, and then we're going to do this other thing, read a book. And often just knowing what the session is going to look like can really help them focus more and be less anxious also. Yeah, well, I think we're going to wrap it up for tonight here. So thank you again to everybody for attending tonight. We're so glad you were able to join us. Thank you for taking time to be here tonight. This has been a really great webinar, and we just really enjoyed seeing all your questions and trying to answer those as best we can. And thank you so much to Katie and Natalie for being here tonight and helping out. And we would love to see everybody for our next webinar in January. And I hope you all have a great evening. Thank you. Bye-bye.